My sister bought our parents a luxury car, then tried to stick me with the $85 bill. So I taught her a lesson she'll never forget, and I've spent my entire life being the responsible one. The one who thought ahead, who played it safe, who made the right choices while everyone else acted like life was one big party. My younger sister Vanessa, on the other hand, has always been the golden child, the carefree, reckless, and endlessly adored daughter. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how much I achieved. My parents always found a way to dismiss my successes while treating Vanessa like the center of the universe. I got straight A's in high school. That was expected. Vanessa got a C. They took her out for a fancy dinner to celebrate her hard work. I got my first job at 16 to start saving for college. They lectured me about focusing on my studies. Vanessa spent the summer at the lake with her friends. Well, she needed to enjoy her youth. It had always been this way, and by the time I was in my 30s, I had come to accept that no matter what I did, I would never be their priority. But I didn't expect them to make it so painfully obvious. For their 35th wedding anniversary, I decided to do something special. My mother had always dreamed of going to France, constantly watching French cooking shows, trying her hand at homemade croissants, and going on and on about how she would one day walk along the Seine, visit the Louvre, and eat at an authentic Parisian cafe. I spent months planning the perfect trip, a week in Paris, staying in a luxury hotel with a balcony overlooking the Eiffel Tower, guided tours of the most beautiful historical sites, private cooking classes, and a dinner cruise. It was a gift they wouldn't just enjoy, but one that would give them memories for a lifetime. A week before the anniversary party, Vanessa called me out of nowhere. She rarely reached out unless she needed something, so I already had a bad feeling. "Hey sis, what are you getting Mom and Dad?" Her voice was fake sweet, the way it always was when she wanted to pry information out of me. I hesitated, but figured there was no harm in telling her. "A trip to France. You know Mom's always wanted to go, so I arranged everything." There was a beat of silence before she let out a loud, obnoxious laugh. "Oh my God, that's so typical of you. I knew you'd do something boring like that." I should have known right then that she was up to something, but I just sighed. "And what are you getting them?" I asked. She paused for dramatic effect. "It's a surprise," she finally said. "But trust me, it's going to blow your little vacation out of the water." Then she hung up. The night of the party, I arrived at the restaurant holding the small gift box that contained the plane tickets and itinerary. The place was packed with relatives and family friends, and my parents looked thrilled, basking in the attention. Vanessa was fluttering around, acting like she had organized the entire event, giving waiters unnecessary instructions, and soaking up compliments from guests who believed every exaggerated story she told. I reminded myself to stay focused. This wasn't about Vanessa. It was about celebrating Mom and Dad. After dinner, we moved on to the gift giving. I waited patiently as people handed over sentimental photo albums, heartfelt letters, and personalized gifts. I was just about to stand up when Vanessa clapped her hands loudly. "Wait, before we continue, everyone needs to look outside." The entire restaurant turned toward the massive windows, and that's when I saw it. Parked right outside, gleaming under the streetlights, was a brand new Porsche with a giant red bow on top. The room erupted into gasps and applause. "Mom, Dad," Vanessa beamed, dramatically pressing a hand to her chest like she was in some kind of movie. "You deserve nothing but the best, so this is my gift to you." Mom burst into tears, covering her mouth, and Dad just stood there, stunned. Within seconds, people were rushing outside to take pictures, gushing over Vanessa's generosity, praising her for being so thoughtful. I sat there gripping my small gift box, feeling utterly invisible. By the time people started filtering back inside, I felt ridiculous even trying to present my gift. Still, I cleared my throat and forced myself to speak. I also got something for you," I said, holding out the box. Mom took it with barely a glance, still wiping away happy tears. She opened it, looked at the tickets for half a second, and then set them aside with a distracted, "Oh, that's nice, sweetheart. Thank you." Vanessa smirked. "Well, obviously, my gift is a little more practical," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "A car versus a vacation? No comparison." And instead of telling her to be polite, our parents just laughed and agreed. The rest of the night was all about Vanessa's incredible generosity. How lucky Mom and Dad were to have such a thoughtful daughter. How amazing it was that Vanessa could afford something so extravagant. No one even acknowledged my gift again. I picked at my food, barely able to swallow, and after an hour, I made up an excuse about work and left. No one even noticed. I threw myself into my job after that, working late, taking on extra projects, anything to keep from thinking about that night. But 2 weeks later, an email popped up in my inbox that made my stomach drop. The subject line read, Porsche invoice, $85,000. I clicked it, and sure enough, there was a bill attached. The sender? Vanessa. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe she sent it to me by accident. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I grabbed my phone and called her. She answered immediately, like she had been waiting. What the hell is this? I snapped. Oh, that, she said casually. Yeah. So, I got the car on credit, and I don't actually have the money to pay for it. So, you need to take care of it. I nearly dropped my phone. Are you insane? She let out a dramatic sigh. Relax, you can afford it. You always act like the responsible one. So, be responsible. You bought a car you couldn't afford, made this huge spectacle in front of everyone, and now you expect me to pay for it. Exactly, she chirped. You get it. Something inside me snapped. I actually laughed. Not out of amusement, but from sheer disbelief. Absolutely not, I said. This is your mess. You clean it up. I hung up. Within minutes, the text started. You're so selfish. I can't believe you'd do this to your own sister. Mom and Dad will be so disappointed in you. I'm begging you, please help me. I turned off my phone. By the time I left work that evening, I had over 50 missed calls and nearly 100 messages. But the real surprise was waiting for me when I got home. Sitting on the steps of my apartment building, Vanessa. Her mascara streaked down her face, eyes puffy from crying. She jumped up the second she saw me. Finally, I've been waiting here for 2 hours. I sighed, walking past her, but she grabbed my arm. Please. The bank wants the first payment, and I don't have it. I pulled my arm free. Maybe you should have thought about that before buying a car you couldn't afford. She let out a frustrated sob. Please, I'm begging you. I stared at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. This isn't my problem, Vanessa. It's yours. She screamed in frustration and stormed off. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, my phone was already vibrating before I even got out of bed. I groaned, reaching for it, and saw 16 missed calls, half from Vanessa, half from my mother. The unread texts were piling up, each one more desperate than the last. Call me now. This is serious, Natalie. Mom and Dad are really upset. You're going to ruin our family over this? Do you even care about us at all? You're the worst sister in the world. I put my phone on silent and went about my morning as if nothing had happened. I made coffee, sat on my balcony, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. By lunchtime, my mother was calling my office phone. That was when I knew things had escalated. I let it go to voicemail, but an email followed immediately after. Natalie, we need to talk. Come to the house after work. This is important. There was no way I was getting out of this. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, already bracing myself for what was coming. When I walked in, the scene was exactly what I expected. My parents sitting stiffly on the couch, looking grave, while Vanessa sat between them, arms crossed, a carefully crafted expression of devastation on her face. The second I stepped inside, my father shook his head. We don't understand why you're doing this. I let out a humorless laugh. Doing what exactly? Refusing to help your sister? My mother snapped. She made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you abandon her. I stared at her, barely able to believe what I was hearing. She didn't make a mistake. A mistake is getting the wrong size shoes. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. She deliberately bought an $85,000 car she couldn't afford, knowing full well she wasn't going to pay for it, because she wanted to put on a show. Vanessa let out a fake little sob. You're so dramatic, she sniffled. The bank keeps calling me. They want the first payment now. I don't have it. That tends to happen when you take out loans for things you can't afford, I said flatly. Mom stood then, walking to her purse. Enough of this. If you won't help your sister, then we don't want your gift either. She pulled out the envelope I had given them at the anniversary dinner and shoved it at me. I stared at the plane tickets in my hands, my stomach dropping. Cancel everything, she said coldly. Get the refund, and we'll use that money to help Vanessa. I was stunned into silence. It wasn't just that they were rejecting my gift, it was the way they were doing it. The ease with which they dismissed something that had taken me months to plan, just because Vanessa needed bailing out again. Dad nodded. It's the right thing to do, Natalie. She's your sister. I looked between them, feeling something inside me shift. The old version of me, the one that spent my whole life chasing their approval, would have caved, would have fought to make them see my side, would have tried to argue that this wasn't fair. But I wasn't that person anymore. Instead, I took a deep breath, carefully placed the tickets in my bag, and stared right at them. I'll take care of it, I said evenly, voice betraying nothing. Vanessa let out a triumphant sniffle. Mom looked satisfied. Dad nodded approvingly. Good. Let us know when the refund is processed. I walked out of that house, my mind already working through what I was about to do next. The moment I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat at my kitchen table, and stared at those tickets. I had spent months researching the best hotels in Paris, finding the perfect itinerary, booking exclusive tours so that my mother could experience the city in a way most tourists never got to. And now, all of it was being thrown away because my parents refused to hold Vanessa accountable for anything. I didn't sleep that night, but by the time the sun rose, my mind was crystal clear. The second the travel agency opened, I made the call. Hi, I need to cancel a vacation package to France, I said. Everything, flights, hotel, tours, all of it. The agent processed the cancellation, and within an hour, I had confirmation that the full refund would be deposited into my account in 3 to 5 business days. The moment it hit, I moved it into a separate savings account, where it would stay. Not a single penny was going to Vanessa. I was making coffee when my phone rang. Mom, I answered, knowing exactly how this was about to go. Have you gotten the refund yet? She asked, skipping straight to business. Yes, I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. Good. Transfer it to me right away. Vanessa needs to make the first payment by Friday. No. The silence on the other end was immediate. What did you just say? She finally asked, her voice dangerously low. I said no, I repeated. I'm not giving you the money. How dare you? She exploded. You selfish, greedy girl. After everything we've done for you, you're just going to sit there and watch your sister suffer? Vanessa chose to buy a car she couldn't afford, I said, keeping my voice calm. That's not my problem. You are irresponsible, heartless, jealous, she spat. I can't believe I raised such a selfish child. I ended the call mid-rant and blocked her number. Then I blocked Vanessa's for good measure. The next morning, I woke up to my social media notifications exploding. Mom had posted a long, dramatic message on Facebook. With a heavy heart, I need to share something that's breaking our family apart. My oldest daughter, Natalie, has shown her true colors. When her beloved sister Vanessa found herself in a difficult situation, Natalie turned her back on family. She is hoarding money while her sister struggles. I never thought I'd have to make something like this public, but I'm at my wit's end. Please pray for Vanessa during this difficult time, and pray that Natalie finds it in her heart to do the right thing. The comments were a dumpster fire. I can't believe anyone could be so cruel to their own sister. Family should always come first. I always thought Natalie was stuck up. What kind of person abandons family in their time of need? I read through every single comment, my blood pressure rising with each one. The narrative my mother had crafted was masterful in its manipulation. Vanessa was a helpless victim, and I was the heartless villain. And I could have ignored it. I could have let them spin their lies. But I was done being their scapegoat. So I opened my laptop and started typing. Since my mother has chosen to make private family matters public, let me share the full story she conveniently left out. At my parents' 35th anniversary, I gave them a fully paid luxury trip to France. My sister Vanessa, meanwhile, bought them a brand new Porsche. What nobody knew was that she couldn't afford it and took out a loan she had no intention of paying. 2 weeks later, she sent me an $85,000 invoice and demanded I cover the cost. When I refused, my parents returned my gift and told me to use the refund to bail her out. Don't believe me? Here are the receipts. I attached screenshots of Vanessa's email, her text messages, the invoice, my parents' demands, everything. Then I hit post. And within minutes, the internet erupted. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. Within minutes, my post was spreading like wildfire, and the comments shifted almost immediately. The sympathy that had once poured in for Vanessa dried up, replaced with outrage. Not at me, but at her. Wait. So she bought a Porsche just to flex, knowing she couldn't pay for it. Your parents returned a fully paid trip to France just to enable your sister's financial stupidity? Vanessa is a straight-up scam artist. She didn't give them a car. She gave them a loan in their name. Family doesn't mean financially abusing one sibling for the sake of the other. People weren't just reacting, they were angry. It was clear that Vanessa's manipulations didn't sit well with most people, especially those who had been in my position before. I started getting private messages from distant relatives and even old family friends, some apologizing for assuming the worst, others confirming what I already knew. Vanessa had been pulling stunts like this for years. Then my Aunt Linda, Mom's best friend since college, commented, "Mary, I love you, but this is shameful behavior. You have always let Vanessa get away with murder while holding Natalie to impossible standards." I bit my tongue for years, but not anymore. That comment hit hard, because Aunt Linda wasn't just some random family member. She was someone my mom actually respected. And judging by how quickly Mom's original post disappeared, I knew she had read every word. Then came the frantic texts. Unblocked numbers. Random family members I hadn't spoken to in years. Even my dad, who rarely got involved in drama, sent a terse message, "Call your mother." Now, I ignored them all. I had spent my whole life letting them dictate my emotions, guilt-tripping me into submission. But for the first time, the weight of their expectations was off my shoulders. It wasn't my job to fix this mess. But the real satisfaction came a few days later when my Uncle Stephen, who still kept in touch with both sides of the family, called me, barely able to contain his laughter. "Oh, you are gonna love this," he said, his voice full of amusement. "Your parents tried to return the Porsche to the dealership. They assumed they could just give it back like an unwanted Christmas sweater. Guess what? They can't." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Wait. What?" "Oh yeah," he continued. "Turns out, Vanessa signed a contract with no return clause, and the only way out of it is to pay the full amount. Which, surprise, surprise, they don't have." I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk forming. "So what now? What's their plan?" Uncle Stephen laughed. "Your dad had to pull $40,000 from his retirement fund just to cover the first payments and penalties. And let me tell you, he is furious. Your mom is blaming you, of course, saying this never would have happened if you had just helped the family. Of course she was. It didn't matter that Vanessa was the one who caused this mess. It was still my fault for refusing to clean it up. How's Vanessa handling all of this?" I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. "Oh, she's milking it," Uncle Stephen said dryly. "Crying to anyone who will listen about how betrayed she feels, how she never thought her own sister would turn on her. But here's the kicker, nobody's buying it anymore. You exposed her so thoroughly that even her closest friends are starting to distance themselves." I grinned. "So she finally ran out of people to manipulate." "Looks like it," he said. "Oh, and one more thing. Your mom is pissed because a few of their friends called them out to their faces. That nearly made me choke on my coffee." "Wait, what happened?" "Well," Uncle Stephen said, clearly enjoying this, apparently at their weekly game night, one of their friends, Janet, I think, asked your mom why they didn't just make Vanessa get a job to pay for her own damn car. Your mom tried to make excuses, but people weren't having it. They sided with you, Natalie. Some of them even told your parents they had spent years watching them favor Vanessa while treating you like an afterthought. That was when it really hit me. It wasn't just me. It wasn't all in my head. Other people had seen it too. The favoritism, the manipulation, the way my parents had bent over backwards to excuse Vanessa's behavior while expecting me to shoulder every burden. And now, they were finally facing consequences. In the days that followed, I learned that Vanessa's situation was worse than I had thought. She wasn't just losing sympathy, she was losing everything. Several of her friends reached out to me privately, sharing similar stories of how she had used them over the years. She threw me a huge surprise birthday party last year. Her old college roommate, Emily, messaged me, rented out an entire rooftop bar, ordered expensive champagne, even hired a private chef. I thought it was the nicest thing anyone had ever done for me. Then, 2 weeks later, she started hinting that since it was my party, maybe I should cover half the cost. I ended up paying for most of it because she guilt-tripped me. I thought I was the only one she did this to. It wasn't just Emily. Other messages kept pouring in, stories of Vanessa's elaborate generosity that always ended the same way. Someone else stuck with the bill. My parents, meanwhile, were drowning in their own mistakes. The money they had taken out of the retirement fund came with penalties they hadn't accounted for, and now, with their credibility tanked among their friends, they were scrambling to save face. But the absolute best moment came when my cousin Rachel, who had been giving me updates from the extended family group chat, sent me a text one afternoon. "Just a heads up, Mom just talked to Aunt Mary. Vanessa's car got repossessed this morning." I actually gasped. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Apparently, she stopped making payments entirely. Didn't even try. The bank came and took it right out of the driveway." I sat back, staring at my phone, then burst out laughing. After everything, after the dramatic unveiling, the gloating, the way she made me feel small at that restaurant, Vanessa didn't even get to keep the car. Karma had officially delivered. And the best part? I had nothing to do with it. She had done this to herself. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and for the first time in years, I felt truly, blissfully free. No more guilt. No more expectations. No more chasing approval from people who never saw my worth. Vanessa's mess was hers alone, and I was finally done cleaning it up. Days passed, and the silence was almost unsettling. After years of being bombarded with demands, guilt trips, and last-minute crises, it felt strange to wake up and not have my phone flooded with Vanessa's drama or my parents' lectures about family responsibility. But I knew better than to think it was over. This wasn't a family that let things go. It was a family that let things fester. Sure enough, late one afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Natalie," my father's voice came through, cold and clipped. "Come to the house. We need to talk." I almost laughed. Of course. No apology, no pleasantries, just another demand. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, already pulling the phone away from my ear. "You owe us this conversation," he snapped. "You embarrassed your mother. You humiliated Vanessa. You made this entire family a public joke." I rolled my eyes. "Actually, Vanessa did that when she tried to scam me out of 85 grand. But sure, Dad, let's pretend I'm the problem here." He sighed, clearly trying to keep his temper in check. "Just come over, Natalie. One last time." And for some reason, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, I agreed. When I arrived, my mother was already waiting on the porch, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looked exhausted, but the second she saw me, her face hardened. "We need to fix this," she said immediately, as if I was the one who had broken something. I stepped inside, and there she was, Vanessa, sitting on the couch with puffy eyes and a miserable scowl, like a child forced to apologize after throwing a tantrum. Dad sat in his usual chair, staring at me like I was a disappointment he no longer had the energy to lecture. "So," I prompted, folding my arms. "What's the emergency this time?" Vanessa let out a dramatic sniffle. "You ruined my life." I actually laughed. "Oh, I ruined your life? That's interesting. Please, Vanessa, tell me exactly how I forced you to buy a Porsche you couldn't afford. Tell me how I made you lie to everyone about being able to pay for it. Because I would love to hear that version of events." Her lips trembled, but instead of fighting back, she turned to Mom and Dad. "See? She doesn't even care." Mom sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. "Natalie, we understand that Vanessa made a mistake." I tilted my head. "Oh, do you?" "Because I don't recall you holding her accountable at any point." Dad leaned forward, his voice eerily calm. "This isn't about blame anymore. It's about solutions. We're in a difficult financial situation now because of this mess, and we need to figure out a way forward." I stared at him, then at Vanessa, and then at Mom, who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. "Let me guess," I said. "You want me to help fix it?" Silence. Then, Mom actually had the nerve to say, "Natalie, if you could just loan us some money to cover what's left." I let out a sharp laugh. "Are you serious?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Don't be selfish. This is your family." "No." That single word rang through the room like a gunshot. I took a step closer, looking each of them in the eye. "Do you realize what you're asking me? You returned my gift because I refused to clean up Vanessa's mess. You called me selfish, blasted me all over social media, let strangers and extended family tear me apart for days. And now that your perfect daughter's car has been repossessed, now that your finances are in freefall, now, you suddenly want my help?" Mom's face went pale. Dad exhaled heavily, rubbing his forehead. Vanessa just looked down, avoiding my glare. Unbelievable, I muttered. Mom started to speak again, but I held up a hand. No, you don't get to keep dismissing what you did to me just because you need something from me now. I turned to Vanessa. And you? God, Vanessa, you really thought I was going to bail you out again? After everything. She finally snapped. Oh, get off your high horse, Natalie. You've always acted like you're so much better than me just because you're boring and responsible. Well, guess what? People like me. People think I'm fun, exciting. Do they? I cut in, smirking. Because it seems like a whole lot of them suddenly realized you're a manipulative scam artist. Tell me, Vanessa, how many friends do you have left now? Her eyes flashed with rage. Dad stood abruptly, slamming his palm against the table. Enough. I turned to him, my voice quiet but firm. You want my help? Here it is. Figure it out without me. I am done being the only responsible adult in this family. I'm done being the one you expect to clean up Vanessa's disasters while she never faces a single consequence. You can blame me all you want, but this mess? You created it. And I'm walking away. I turned and headed straight for the door. Mom called after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. I had wasted years trying to earn their approval, trying to be the perfect daughter while they handed everything to Vanessa. But that night, as I drove away, I felt something I never had before. Relief. For the first time in my life, I was free, and I had no intention of ever looking back. It was amazing how quickly the silence set in. After my final conversation with my parents, the calls stopped. The texts stopped. Even the passive-aggressive social media posts disappeared. I knew exactly what had happened. Vanessa had lost her audience. There was no one left to manipulate, no one left to pity her, and my parents had probably realized that no amount of guilt-tripping would get me to hand over a dime. They weren't sorry, not really. They were just out of options. For the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't have to brace myself every morning for the next disaster. I didn't have to dread holiday gatherings or carefully word every text so I wouldn't set off some ridiculous family feud. It was like I had been living under a constant, invisible weight, one I had learned to carry so well that I hadn't even noticed how heavy it was. Now that it was gone, I could breathe. With the refund from the France trip safely tucked away, I decided to do something I had never done before. I put myself first. I sat down, pulled up travel sites, and booked my own getaway. But not to France. No, France was tainted now, a reminder of the gift they had tossed aside like it was nothing. Instead, I chose Argentina, a place I had always dreamed of visiting but had never prioritized because I was too busy being responsible, too busy worrying about everyone else. Over the next few weeks, as I planned my trip, I started to notice something interesting happening within the family. It started small, a text from my cousin Rachel, just a simple, "Hey, just wanted to say I admire how you handled everything. You didn't deserve any of it." Then a message from Aunt Linda, telling me she regretted not standing up for me sooner. And then came the biggest shock, a call from Grandma Joan. I hesitated before answering, not knowing where she stood in all of this. But when I picked up, her first words were, "Natalie, honey, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you." I was speechless. "I've watched your parents coddle Vanessa your entire life," she continued. "And I've seen how hard you worked just to get a fraction of the recognition she got for doing nothing. It was never fair, and I should have said something sooner." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted gently. "Because I let it happen. And so did a lot of people in this family. But not anymore." And she wasn't exaggerating. Because over the next several weeks, I learned that my parents had completely lost control of the narrative. Thanks to my post, everyone knew the truth now. The aunts and uncles who had blindly supported them? Not anymore. The family friends who used to dote on Vanessa? They weren't returning her calls. Even her so-called best friends had started distancing themselves, realizing they had been used just like everyone else. Then, a week before my trip, Uncle Stephen called again. "Natalie, you are going to love this." I laughed. "Oh God, what now?" He barely contained his amusement. "So, you know how Vanessa lost the car? Well, apparently, your parents tried to file a complaint against the dealership for unfair lending practices." I almost choked on my drink. "Are you serious?" "Oh, it gets better," he said. "Not only did the dealership shut them down immediately, but now the bank is reviewing their accounts because they're behind on some payments thanks to all the money they had to pull out for Vanessa's screw-up." I let out a low whistle. "So they're really feeling it now, huh?" "Oh, they're feeling it, All right, he said. And let me tell you, your mom? She is livid that no one is coming to their rescue. She actually tried to guilt-trip Aunt Linda into helping out, but Linda just laughed at her and said, maybe you should ask Vanessa to be responsible for once. I grinned. About time someone told them that. As much as I enjoyed hearing about karma doing its job, I had no desire to see it firsthand. So when my flight to Argentina finally took off, I turned off my phone, sat back, and let myself be excited for once. The trip was everything I had hoped for. I walked through the colorful streets of Buenos Aires, took tango lessons in hidden dance studios, explored the breathtaking landscapes of Patagonia, and ate some of the best food of my life. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for the next disaster. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, bracing for the next manipulative scheme. I was just living, something I had spent my entire life denying myself. But the real surprise came 2 days before I was set to return home. I was sitting in a quiet cafe in Mendoza, sipping wine and flipping through the photos I had taken, when an email notification popped up on my phone. The subject line? From Mom. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Natalie, I heard you're in Argentina. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Your father and I have been talking, and we've realized that maybe we didn't handle things the best way. We never meant to make you feel unimportant, and we certainly never wanted to push you away. I know it's too late to fix what's happened, but when you get back, maybe we could meet for coffee? Just to talk. No expectations. No demands. Just you and me. I read the message twice, waiting for the usual anger to flare up, but all I felt was tired. Was this an actual attempt at an apology? Or was this just another calculated move, a way to pull me back in? I wasn't sure. And for the first time, I realized it didn't matter. I wasn't the same person who had walked away from their house weeks ago, crushed and defeated. I wasn't the girl who spent years begging them to see my worth. I didn't need their validation anymore. Whether my mother's words were genuine or just another manipulation attempt, the outcome was the same. I wasn't going back. I took a slow sip of my wine, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, and let out a deep breath. When I got home, I would decide whether I wanted to respond. But for now, I had a world to explore.